Can you turn towards me? Nice. Wrinkle your forehead. Raise your eyebrows up a little bit. You're the man. We started Optinerve in my garage in Granada Hills, and we had done a couple low-budget movies for Fredel and Ray, and
Spirits.
And we were trying to like make our name. And Tom called us and said that he was up to direct the remake of Night of the Living Dead. So we did some test makeups and some test sculptures to try to think out of the box. And John and I spent a lot of late nights and a lot of Jack Daniels trying to come up with different ideas. And John had some really great ideas of how to make things new and exciting for Tom. And we tried harder. We had to try really hard to come up with different ideas. And we did a test makeup on a friend of mine, this gelatin makeup with the fake eyes, and sent Tom a VHS copy of that, and I think it really kind of blew Tom's mind.
Brains!
Don't say brains.
Yeah, we came up with the idea, I don't know which one of us thought of it, but of using the blank eyes, which I kind of didn't like once we got it because it looked kind of fake, but I mean the idea was that they're dead and they're not moving, and he fell in love with that idea, and the gelatin, the translucency of it, which we kind of dropped because I think the humidity in Pittsburgh didn't really make it realistic. We do appliances, they would expand too big,
How long did it take to do this? 2.5? Yeah. Two and a half? We did some with the eyes, with the black cloth in the eyes, and now his own eyes.
What is this?
So you get some stuff in your tongue.
What I got?
I remember we talked a lot about how, that what made the first film scary was the believability of it. It's not that you have this big mechanical puppet that's rotting and falling apart, but they're freshly dead. They look like your next door neighbor died and came back to life, and that was one of the really big driving forces. It's like the less is more approach. It'd be scary because it's believable, not scary because it's more outrageous or heavily designed.
Yeah, he said, no disrespect to Bernie Wrightson, but it was less Bernie Wrightson and more just the guy next door.
Well, it depends on the project. There's a project where that Wrightson look is perfect, and then this. This project, I think you and I both felt that way, that kind of the less is more. It wasn't
dripping dead. Yeah. It wasn't, rotting, moss-covered zombies. They were like weird, creepy people next door who had just died.
Right. We did a lot of research. I mean, we really, always looking at books and videos, and there's like a month there or so of just researching, trying to figure out what's been done.
Yep.
What can we do that's different, and like how do we, make this ours? And then you and I started getting into that when people become zombies, their faces shrink in.
But the cartilage doesn't.
Right. But most people build appliances out, and then the ears and the nose look smaller. So we got into this idea we're going to make oversized ears and a nose, and that came from looking at like prisoner of war videos and looking at the real stuff. And their nose and ears always look huge.
There was a great bookstore in LA called the Amok Bookstore. Remember the Amok Bookstore had this like amazing section of just really weird, creepy stuff, and they had a book there with the medical investigation of death. Remember that black and white book with 511?
Oh yeah.
And these books had just really weird.
That was our Bible for that.
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. It was like how to make people dead, but in the most realistic possible way. I mean, just the weirdest shit. Like there's one where a old lady had her face eaten off by her poodle after she died. And it's like, but the pattern of bites and stuff, I mean, you definitely picked up on that on Day of the Dead, but that sort of stuff carried over into the remake of Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, I remember those discussions too, that we were thinking that as an artist, you tend to kind of pick and choose what you like and put it together, and we thought that took away from the reality of it because you were injecting your artistic balance and you were doing something that was compositionally correct from an artist standpoint, but what happens in real life isn't necessarily bound. An artist didn't design how a dog's eating someone's face off. So I remember we tried to copy a bunch of stuff just verbatim from that book to get out of that, to pop us out of that, like putting in too much of our kind of thought process into it again, to heighten the reality of it, because these are real wounds and this is the pattern it looks like. All these little subtle tiny things to kind of build up to a reality that made it believable.
Madness.
When we got the job, our first research trip was to the morgue in Pittsburgh. And that was phenomenal. Because at the time, remember, Cyril Wick was the head of the Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
he's like
he did
famous.
He did the JFK.
Oh, dude, yeah, super famous coroner. But we get there and we're thinking, it's going to be this like, crouchy old curmudgeon with a cigar eating a sandwich. And we get there, it's like the hottest blonde corner. She's super cute, and she's walking around, and she goes, "Don't breathe through your nose, whatever you do." And so we're like breathing through our mouth, like, and she showed us every dead body in the works, and then some. And when she said,
Well, she did an autopsy, right?
Yeah, she goes, "Do you want to see the stinkers?" I go, "What's a stinker?" She goes, "Well, they're down in the basement." And we went down a couple levels to these old cabinets with bodies they have not solved. And they pulled one out, and it was this green, fucking, I don't know what, dead person. She says, this was a suicide. But when she pulled those they're all old and wood, and you could tell they're from like 1860s. And she pulled this one out. And then she pulled one out and goes, "And we don't know what this is." And she pulled out like bones and like a pile of flesh. And I was like, we don't know what it is. Like, wow. It was just, and then she let us take photos of everything. As long as we didn't take photos of the faces, out of respect to the family. But that's where we got that weird yellow flesh tone, which we didn't know that people go do gray or green or purple. Absolutely not correct.
It's like, your skin without blood in it.
Yep.
It's got a yellow cast.
But it wasn't like when Tom's like, "Oh fuck, like Dawn of the Dead." Remember, they're just gray or blue.
Yeah, but it works for that film.
Absolutely,
because it's a little bit more kitschy, and it fits the style of that film. It kind of makes that film charming.
But once we found that shade, it really had this weird sickly color to it. So I think that research was really invaluable, and the photos, and we took our whole crew.
I don't think I went.
Oh yeah, you don't want to go.
Yeah, I was the only one that didn't want to go, and I think it was more like the smell than anything.
Yeah, and it was
because I look at the stuff in the books.
Never breathe through your nose.
Yeah.
Smile for the camera. It's a close-up.
I think we kept saying they should look like your next door neighbor fell over, died, and got back up again, and you should believe that it's your next door neighbor being reanimated.
100%. And that led into the castings. One thing we realized that the casting of the zombies was just as important as the makeup, because if you have a really cool-looking, creepy-looking actor, your job's halfway done.
Yeah, the guy in the cemetery in the beginning. Wasn't that a teacher or something?
Yeah, he was just
Tom
great.
Great
Just
face.
Dirk, remember Dirk?
Yeah.
I mean, just really good-looking, unusual character faces. So once we had we knew we went with thin actors. We didn't
do anything on him, but just highlight, just like a little bit of color. We didn't even do prosthetics on him.
Will you press your face up against the window?
Yeah, the side of your face. Yeah.
But Tom, again, we had to respect Tom because he was our makeup effects mentor. So we always, we ran stuff by him a lot. He came by the shop. It was his shop. We rented his little shop in this little weird town. What was it called? Bloomfield?
Yeah.
So we would go upstairs and shoot our makeup tests up there because the light was so cool and it looked like, this weird environment. And one of the great zombie tests, I hit the guy with the crowbar and we put dust on him. One of the things we learned from watching Hong Kong Kung Fu films is they always put dust on their clothes.
Yes, have some way to visually represent the impact.
The impact, exactly. So we were doing all that kind of stuff. And this all came from, again, sitting at Tom's house and bullshitting and having a beer and just watching old movies. So that whole pre-production period was one of the funnest times, I think, in our lives because it was truly Savini, us, zombies. Can't get much better.
You're right.
What happens if you dart your tongue in and out? Oh man. Paint his tongue like purple or something? That looks great.
I think we had tremendous respect for the source material. I mean, it is just one of the most definitive, horror films of modern times. And even some of the casting, I think some of the casting elements are trying to find people like Bill Moseley, like who's going to do that part that Russ did, and because it's such, I mean, he steals the movie, and it's become kind of a little cultural icon, the character, and they're coming to get you, Barbara, with a Karloff accent.
Coming to get you, Barbara.
And Tom and I we just worked on Chainsaw Massacre, a little while earlier, that Chainsaw 2, and Moseley was in that. And I don't know, I think I mentioned to Tom, what about Moseley? I mean, he's a colorful, fun character. I think he can capture, that same kind of energy, but in a different way and make it his own. So there was definitely reverence for the source material. And I think the trick when you do these kind of films is you want to capture what works in the original material, but you don't want to just copycat it. And you want to also make it your own. So there's a lot of juggling and there's a balancing act that needs to be done. You need to cover a lot of territory. You know, if you deviate too far, then I think you alienate people that are fans. If you copy it too much, what's the point in doing it? So there was always that kind of balance we were trying to achieve. Obviously, we have more modern makeup effects techniques. We want to do prosthetics. We don't want to do crazy prosthetics. Don't deviate too much. And all of that was very much driven by what we thought worked, I think, in the original film.
Move your chest around a little bit.
One of my favorite things, and this is a Tom idea, was the very beginning. You see the cemetery zombie, and his clothes fall off because when they bury you in a coffin, they slit the clothes up the back so they're easier to get on. And you see his clothes fall off, and you see the autopsy, scar, and that was really creepy and weird, and that was totally a Tom.
And from real life too. And also the thing I like about it is, and I think it's, nowadays it's such a different thing where you feel like, you have to be spoon-fed everything, and everything's explained. It's never explained. It's a given that the audience either figures it out, or if not, there's tough luck. You just kind of got to go with it.
Well, the best one ever is, what does it say in the front of the house?
Oh, the M. Celeste.
Mary Celeste. Which was John's idea. That was he told Tom.
Yeah,
that.
there's a famous story about a film, a ship called the Mary Celeste that found just going into harbor was found by itself with no crew members on board, and apparently the myth
food
is
still there.
Yeah, the myth is that there's
lit,
food sizzling on the food still being cooked, but the crew entirely disappeared and was gone. And I said, why don't you use Mary Celeste or something as a name or a sign on there?
It says on the front of the door, M. Celeste.
I think George didn't like that idea because he didn't really understand it, but maybe he didn't understand the context of it. I don't know.
Turn around, do it.
No, don't turn around, don't turn around. Turn back around, turn back around.
I don't want to see you yet.
Okay, now you can turn around. You're wonderful.
The original film, I think, was meant to be much more elaborate, and I think he was very inspired by Dario Argento's work, and he wanted to do like POV bullets going through people's heads, and this crazy kind of kinetic style, which I think didn't really mesh with George's vision, where he wanted to be a little bit closer, be a little bit closer to the original film. But there was a whole brainstorming period where we just sat there for like weeks, really, while prepping or doing head casts and going through it. And I think that's one of the good things about working with Tom. I think he kind of encourages that kind of
collaboration.
Yeah, I think so. And,
yeah, very much. And I miss that. Like we work on modern day movies now with directors who don't want to hear it.
No.
The crowbar in the forehead, that was pretty tricky because it had to be a retractable crowbar.
Yeah, and then we had to actually make a crowbar. We had the retractable one for the impact, and then we had another one that had to be mounted on a plate underneath it. And with these very subtle appliances where you can't really put heavy fiberglass plates underneath them, we were always trying to hide crazy, like the bullet hits, metal plates, and we're doing... we're not doing these big, bulky, caveman-looking, zombies. They're very thin-layered. So we're trying to hide metal plates and fiberglass plates and screws and plugs underneath really, really thin appliances and making sure they don't bulge.
Tom had a, sort of almost like the patent on this. Remember that weird, the dental metal plates,
That's what I was talking about, the metal plates for the bullet hits.
Yeah, that was sort of like Tom's signature thing. But how many movies have you done where they stick a 12-gauge shotgun on set and blow up a head?
Fire on the set!
I don't think you do it anymore. We had a dummy
We've done it
where the burnt zombie comes to the back of the truck, and Bill Butler, I think, blows the head off. And
Earl was playing that zombie.
That was a live shotgun round. You can't do that on set anymore. There's just no fucking
we
way.
didn't do it recklessly. I mentioning this. Actually, Earl was playing that zombie, and that was like we made a gelatin head of his. And I remember we made the gelatin head months ahead of time, and when we got. Again, the humidity there in Pittsburgh, the gelatin head was all expanded. And we had to crazy glue it down and nip and tuck it to make it fit. But we were doing. There was two things that were going on. I think the inspiration was maybe scanners because they had talked about how they used a shotgun to blast that head, and we thought, well, that sounds like a good idea. And then I think also the head.
Well, Tom did it in Dawn.
Right, exactly. So this was again, like you said, Tom's our mentor, so we're kind of going with his techniques and his idea. So it seemed like it made sense.
And Tom shot it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Tom did pull the trigger. Tom pulled the trigger. Tom pulled the trigger.
But I've been on set so many times where you're trying to set an explosive charge, and sometimes the head just bounces, or sometimes it evaporates and vaporizes. And you don't get it on film. It doesn't get captured by the shutter.
The best part about the head hits in Night Living Dead were the exit wounds were the traditional Savini plate with a big squib, but the entrance wound was me with a blowgun shooting candy glass capsules at an actor's fucking face. Seriously.
And trying to get that timing down.
Dude, I was amazing at it. The only time I didn't do it is when the mom got shot in the basement, and the effects guy did, and he shot her right in the eye.
Oh.
And right, I mean, she's like, ah!
But you were just holding the blow dart. Didn't you have a tripod set up?
No, I know. I seriously like.
I had a tripod set up.
Right in the guy's forehead. Bam.
What do you think we'll get to this tomorrow?
Oh, we better. Yeah. If we don't get to this, then they're going to take the autopsy zombie away from me.
Tom dealing with George in production, you know, it was kind of hard to see. You know, Tom, it was his first film, and George was, you know, it's weird to have, you're remaking a film with the guy who did it standing next to you. How odd is that? You know, I don't think J.J. Abrams had George Lucas standing next to him during The Force Awakens.
And not just a film, but one of the most influential horror films ever made.
It's got to be weird. It's like, hey, I'm gonna, you know, repaint the Mona Lisa. You know, do you want to stand and watch me do it? You know, it must have been strange for Tom in that sense. But yeah, you know, it was a low budget film, and we had to make it fast, and you know, all the things that we have to go through, you know, in the horror genre.
So one of the things that makes me cringe in the film is when we do when the Uncle Reed zombie, when he gets hit with a crowbar.
Oh yeah.
And we did this rubber head that was really, Tom promised that it was just gonna be for impact shots,
boing,
right?
boing.
And we also did one of those. There was a lot of things. Again, every time I talk about Tom, it invariably comes back to like using magic techniques and tricks to how you stage stuff.
Sleight of hand?
Right, like where I think we had the real Uncle Reed, and he bows out and we bring the dummy in at one point to kind of intercut.
One of my favorite ones is when Bill Moseley gets taken down to the tombstone. That's a good cut. That's a real good cut. It goes from Bill to the dummy, and it just, you know, pops out pretty quick.
We did that in gelatin, right?
Yeah.
I think silicone wasn't really being used that much at that point, and whatever was good-looking silicone was very expensive. I remember we built that in gelatin.
Yeah.
And that dummy looked really looked pretty close to him. You know, I think anytime the eyes are closed, it always helps.
Eyes open and a 1980s fake head is a death curse.
Try just twisting the body even more towards him. Yeah, that looks pretty neat, like his leg.
Again, Tom is a great magician, and sleight of hand is probably the best way to describe it. But it was a big task.
And nobody else that I've worked with, you know, really approaches it that way. He's one of the only guys who has enough of a background, I think, in it. And always think, I mean, there's so many things on Day of the Dead that were like that. Like, we'll hide their head under here, we'll do this and that, and then this will draw their attention over here. So
fake floor, fake underneath thing.
Plus, he could like rig blood tubing like no other human being I know of.
He was good.
He's like the master at like, we're talking about like he's dead.
Oh my God. Tom, let's get him on the phone.
Make sure he's okay.
Hello?
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 Are you guys gonna go?
Yeah, I remember seeing at Columbia, and there's like sort of like three executives and us, and like, you know, like, okay, let's get this thing out. Let's get this pig out of the barn, you know. But I don't remember a big party or anything. I don't remember that. I just remember, you know, we were all hoping for the best, and it just kind of came and went, you know, fortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember liking the film for the most part. I think it's very effective. There was also several gore effects that were cut out of the film that we did, and I remember us hearing that the MPAA had, you know, come to the producers and said, you need to trim like these 4 or 5 shots in here that they're too bloody. And the editor at that point, or assistant editor, I think, who was left with the film because the editor had since finished and moved on, he had entirely cut the shots out. And they sent it back to the MPA, and the MPA said, no, you just need to cut a few frames. The MPA gets very anal about we don't want to see blood flying this way or hitting walls. They said, no, just cut a few frames off. You can still keep the shot in there, we just don't want too much blood flying. And so the editor, I guess, had the option to put it back in, and either he or the producer decided not to. So there's really, I think there's really, 3 or 4 effects that we did that are never seen in the film. Like, meanwhile, here we are, like, what is it now? Like 20 years? What is this, 20 years now?
Yeah, there's more.
And there's a TV series called Walking Dead that has heads exploding.
And Fargo,
and far more graphic violence. I never in a million years, when I was a kid, ever would have thought there'd be a TV series where you have zombies being blown apart and chopped to pieces and like arrows into their heads and head hits. 10 times more violent than anything we couldn't do theatrically back in like the 80s and 90s. I mean, it's such a different world and landscape now than when we were working on that film.
There was a lot of neat, fun stuff that I look back at now, we were very, very lucky, and you know, I'm happy that Tom got a chance. But I think there's a lot of missed opportunities, unfortunately.
Such as?
Just that there's a lot of great storyboards like we talked about, a lot of great designs, and a lot of good
It would have been a
gags
very
and-
different film had he gone with the storyboards. I think it maybe been a little bit more comic book and kinetic, kind of like not as
Sam Raimi.
yeah,
Yeah.
Or like Bad Taste, like
Yeah.
PJ. Maybe not as comic like in tone, but stylistically, visually.
Yeah.
And I think the way it turned out is a little bit more true to the style of the original film. So I think it was maybe the right choice. So the film he wanted to make would have been fun to make.
Yeah.
You know, maybe as another movie
Yeah.
or something. I don't know.
Well, maybe we'll do a sequel.
I think
Tom, we're ready. Let's go. Get the band back together.
let's do it.
Dun, 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 dun. We were here at 4 in the morning, huh, Greg? Yeah. Bill Mosley. Ah! Thick hand. Pat head. Greg Funk. Got his eyeballs in.
Everett, I want to know one thing.
What?
What's love got to do with it?